Hey guys, I'm Tyler. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So, Regular Car Reviews came out with an R50 Pathfinder review. They picked up a 2002 Pathfinder, and I'll be honest, I think they missed the mark a little bit on this one. I'll start with what they got right, and then we'll finish with what I think they ultimately missed out on. Now, I know Regular Car Reviews, like, their gig is sarcastically reviewing cars, right? They don't have a lot of cars on that channel where they give it just outstanding reviews. Most of the time, they stereotype the vehicle, the people who drive them, and it's a good time and you laugh and you're entertained. I get that, but I still think this one missed the mark just a little bit. So what they got right. The 4Runner, Coke, Pathfinder, Pepsi comparison is pretty spot on.
East Diner, can I start you off with something to drink? Yes, please. May I have a 4Runner Coke? Is Pathfinder Pepsi okay? I guess.
The 4Runner definitely has a stronger identity as the everyman 4x4 that Toyota is running. The Pathfinder, it's a little muddy. You know, by the time this Pathfinder in 2002 is being produced, Nissan's got the Xterra, and it's just kind of unclear where the Pathfinder fits. It's off-brand. He talks about the driving being bumpy over certain concrete slabs. It's actually pretty accurate.
You know, on state routes where they like to use cement instead of macadam. Ba-boom, 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 ba-boom.
I feel like I experienced that a lot. What I'm not sure is if there's other vehicles that are comparable, like a 4Runner, where you don't experience that as bad. But valid point, it doesn't ride great over that kind of highway, in my opinion. The overdrive issue, fair enough. If you lift it, you put bigger tires on it like I've got, I find that using cruise control in hilly areas, you can't use cruise control going up a hill. It'll be an overdrive and then bam, it'll slam you right down into third gear. It's so annoying and I hate it. I really, truly do. That's part of why I re-geared my R50 from 4.3 ratio in the diffs to 4.6. Honestly, if you're just doing like freeway flat using cruise control or not using cruise control, the transmission doesn't hunt.
Fourth gear, third gear, fourth gear, third gear, fourth gear, third gear.
Terribly bad. I mean, mine hunts a little, especially with the heavy tires, but it's hilly terrain where I get the transmission kind of confused about what gear to be in. Flat stuff, it usually knows where it belongs and I don't have to worry about it a lot. Oil consumption, yeah, dead on. There are lots of R50s that experience some to awful oil consumption. Mine's at a quart every 700 to 800 miles. No leaks, just burns through the oil. PCV didn't fix it. It's like he said, you know, the cats will clog, you'll get ceramic dust, score the cylinder walls, blow your piston rings. These things have problems with oil consumption. From what I gather, there are plenty of other VQ owners, R50, Maxima, G35, 350. Seems like most editions of the VQ are prone to oil consumption. So it's a good point to bring up on his part because lots of people don't want a vehicle that burns oil. And the R50 Pathfinder, that VQ35 that it gets, there are definitely plenty of them out there right now in the used market that burn oil. So he pulls up the history of the Pathfinder correctly. He talks about the first gen, what it was designed and offered as, and kind of how the second gen ends up there. I don't think he grabs all of what he should have from the history of Pathfinder development, but he brings it up and everything he says is accurate. Regular Car Review says that the Pathfinder, it's kind of like it was designed to keep up with its competitors and then they quit halfway. And if you compare it to the 4Runner, that's, you know, fairly true, right? You get a vehicle, it's the right size, it's the right wheelbase, it's got a competent engine, competent four-wheel drive system, big differentials, like this thing is beefed up, and then you put car suspension on the front. Like why did you finish off this drivetrain with McPherson struts and a unibody? It doesn't make sense. It's a weird way to finish off a vehicle. And he says people who drive Pathfinders and like them for what they are. And I think that's true. Most people who own Pathfinders that I'm familiar with, especially with this kind of the modifying the Pathfinder community, they know it's a simple, get you there four-wheel drive vehicle. We're not trying to pretend to be anything we aren't. Mine costs $3,500. Like this is a budget vehicle that I camp out of and I daily drive. And that's what we appreciate them for. There's no Toyota tax. There's no Wrangler toxicity, right? It's just another Nissan. Good four-wheel drive, gets me where I'm going. And I'm happy with that. And I think that's why most people drive R50s. And he touches on that and he got it right. And that's about all he got right. So let's talk about some of the points that he brought up that I felt like even though it's a sarcastic car review, I think he's just a little wrong, more so than he is on his other videos. You know, I watched a lot of his other videos as research for making my own video about this, and I I think he was more unfair to the Pathfinder than he was to many other similar and different vehicles. He hates the VQ35 in the Pathfinder, which, gonna be honest, kind of just blows my mind. I know from an enthusiast perspective, it's a detuned VQ, like he says, and it's underperforming compared to the other VQs that vehicles have. But you look at the 4Runner, I mean, it's got a 3.4, it's pulling, I don't know, 170, 180 horsepower. Wranglers, Cherokees, none of that's pulling more horsepower than a 240 horsepower VQ. Like, the competition for that kind of reliable, basic 4x4, the VQ is the best engine out of all of those, at least in terms of fun. It's going to have the most pull. Yeah, but he just hates the VQ. It kind of confused me, I'm not going to lie. And then, so the video, he keeps making this implication. He shows pictures of a first-gen 4Runner while he's talking about an R50 Pathfinder. They're nothing alike. The first-gen 4Runner comes out in 1985, and it's done well before R50 Pathfinder production ever hits in 1996. Like, I don't understand why you'd even put. I know that that's the 4Runner that they reviewed, that first gen. I know they have a fourth gen that they reviewed. That actually would have been a little bit closer if they'd reviewed the fourth gen. But they should have, if he was going to compare it to a 4Runner, he had to do it to the third gen, because that runs from 96 to 02. It, by all means, competes with the R50, and that's the 4Runner that most R50 owners have looked at getting, have had, or will buy to replace their Pathfinder. I had a 4Runner before I had my Pathfinder. I wanted a 4Runner, ended up with Pathfinder. There's a lot of R50 owners in the same boat. And to compare a solid front axle 4Runner from the 80s to a Pathfinder from the 2000s just doesn't make sense. It's a bad comparison, honestly. And I mean, his entire point of the video is that the Pathfinder is boring to drive. He spends the first minute with this church analogy, and I get it. Like, he's trying to drive home the point that this car is absolutely terribly boring to drive. But what else, like, compared to anything else, like, it's got to be the same or better. I had a 4Runner. 4Runner was boring as heck to drive. It's 180 horsepower, no character to it, rode terrible because it's body on frame and was old suspension. This rides better. This is more comfortable. It has more character. The VQ pulls better. Like, I don't, like, sure, it's boring, but everything else in that category is boring too. There's no Cherokee that's just a thrill to drive. It's hate on it. It's kind of funny. I get it. It is boring. All of the vehicles from this age are boring. I get it. They're not enthusiast vehicles really, but seemed like that point was a little overused. He really just stuck with it's mediocre and boring. He says it acts like a 4Runner rival. Like, it really is a 4Runner rival. This is, it's the same kind of wheelbase, it's the same kind of body style, same shape, very similar drivetrain. Practically speaking, everybody who drives Pathfinders is very aware of and probably wanted to own at some point a third gen 4Runner. Here's ultimately what he got wrong in his review, is that the Pathfinders, I think he wanted it to be some kind of true off-road purpose-built beast. I think that's why he pulled the first gen 4Runner, but where the Pathfinder wins is being a refined, competent SUV that still can go places at a budget. 4Runner, kind of a little bit closer to the purpose-built, not as much at a budget because you got Toyota tax, and it's not as refined. I don't think, for street driving, I get it. You can get a limited 4Runner with a locking diff. It's got leather, it's got the locking diff, like, that's pretty refined, but it's not as much fun as a VQ with leather. You can get all-wheel drive if you want it. And the Pathfinder, I mean, it's a little softer, but it makes it kind of cleaner. It looks a little bit more like a city vehicle. And so in my opinion, the Pathfinder is just a little bit classier. It rides a little bit better. The interior is laid out a little bit better. It's a little bit more comfortable. The engine's a little bit better. And most people have 4Runners could do everything they wanted in a Pathfinder. Go camping, daily drive it. I get it. If you want a super huge aftermarket support, you want to build a rock banging 4x4, you're going to pick the 4Runner over the Pathfinder. Rightly so. The 4Runner's, it's built more for that. It's a little bit tougher, a little bit easier to modify. I get it. But the Pathfinder, on a budget, beats the 4Runner in most things, honestly. And what he missed out is the history of the R50. Right at 01, they start putting in VQs, so 96 to 2000. The VG33, reliable as heck. It's a rugged looking vehicle. That would have made a great comparison to the 4Runner as well, because now the engine's the same. So now you really got to pick, same horsepower basically, 3.3 at 168, 4Runner's 170 something, I think. That would have made a great comparison, but he ignored it. He picked up an 02, which fine, he reviewed that, but I would have liked to see him pull in the history of the 3.3 liter, the VG33E engine, also into his review, because I think that's an important and probably more prolific version of the R50. There's more 3.3 liter R50s rolling around than the RVQs. They're in production longer. I think he might have enjoyed the 3.3 R50 better. A little bit more rugged looking, get one with an external tire carrier, manual transmission, limited slip rear end. He might have liked it. Might have liked it better, might have liked it worse. I don't know. That engine, obviously less power. He could have pulled that into it a little bit more, but he didn't. And you know what? Regular car reviews, listen, really successful channel. They found their niche. Like, I'm not ragging on them. It's just, as an R50 enthusiast, as someone who actually really likes this vehicle, even with the way his channel runs aside, I would have liked to see him highlight just a little bit more of this, because the R50 doesn't get a lot of love. I don't know if you guys have looked around on YouTube, but there's not a lot of people putting these in spotlight. I like these. I want to see people use them. I want to see people enjoy them for what they are. And I was just hoping to get a little bit more positive press out of his review. And we didn't. It's fine. That video's got 100,000 views already. It is what it is. But, I was on Empora, I was on Reddit. Credit to where credit is due on a couple of guys that I read. I'll pull them up here. So Reddit username, I can't remember. And then Empora username, I read another really good one. I think it was Eric CR. You guys both had terrific input about what you thought of this video and why you thought he was wrong. And you inspired me to, in part, make this video and refine my own opinion about what I was hoping to get out of that review, what was right and what was wrong. So thanks to you guys. Please, let's discuss this video in the comment section. Tell me what you think. I want to know, because this was a big review. This is big news in the R50 community. We don't get this kind of attention very often. So let me know what you think. If you guys have any other questions, I'm always happy to answer those as well. So thank you so much for watching. If you want merch, that's now live. This is a sweatshirt. I made this. It's on my store on Teespring. Link in description. Go check it out. Let me know if you want any other designs. Otherwise, you guys have a great day, and thank you so much for watching. And one other thing, what the heck was up with him not getting the horsepower numbers right? Like, it's pretty well established if you got an automatic VQ, it's 240 horsepower, manual's 250. Like, that seems easy to find, and he couldn't get it. That's weird. I don't know what's going on with that, so. Done. Autofocus test.